Hello, and this is a video for the reception parents. It's a video about the school's reading programme, which is called RWI. Normally I do a big meeting where you can all come in and I discuss it all with you in that time, but obviously with the current situation I'm not able to do that. So I thought I would create a video instead to explain how we teach reading, how you can help at home, and how we can work together to make sure that your children are all doing fantastic at reading and spelling and literacy. Okay, so the school use a reading programme called Read, Write, Inc., which is written by a lady called Ruth Miskin. She worked in Tower Hamlets in London, and she felt that the scheme that she was currently using wasn't working for her pupils, and so she created her own. We've been using it at St Helens for a very long time now, and once we started using it, our results went through the roof. So it is proven to work, not only by Ruth Miskin and all of the other schools that use it, but definitely works for us here at St Helens as well. It's great for children with any kind of additional learning needs. So if they have some issues with reading or spelling or writing, it's great for them. If they don't speak English, it also helps with their literacy as well. So generally, it's just a really, really positive program. We love it. And it's something that works very, very well for us at St Helens. Okay, so the way that we teach the sounds in Read, Write, Inc. Is that each letter has its own sound, and in English it can be a little bit confusing because some of those letters can make different sounds, but we focus, particularly in nursery reception, on the single sound. I can talk a little bit more about how the sounds are split up later, but for now, when I teach the sound, I usually start off with an image. So there is you can see this is the sound You can see the letter written there behind it, but we usually start off with an image. Okay, and we talk about this image and we talk about what the children can see, and usually those images are linked to the sound that the letter makes. For this case, this little girl is a little girl called Maisie, which starts with a and then these are mountains. So this is Maisie, and these are mountains. So I'm focusing particularly on this one sound. So I would teach the image first, and we would call this Maisie. And then on the back is the single sound, the single letter, So we would focus on this being the image Maisie, and then this one just being So we're teaching the image first, then the sound, and then there's lots of vocabulary as well that is linked to this, as you can tell. And so we would talk about that vocabulary, we'd make up some kind of story about the different vocabulary that all starts with So we're pushing vocabulary as well as single sounds. And then I would get the children to recognise it, flip it around. So what's this? What's this? What's this? And then I would show the children how to write it. So there are rhymes that are linked to each sound, which teaches them how to write the sounds. I can give you a copy of those if you want to. So in the same time as them recognising the sound and hearing it, and then hearing it within words, we're also teaching them to write it as well. And that all happens within one lesson. Read, Write, Inc. lessons are very, very fast paced. Things move very, very quickly. And so a lot of the focus is on recognising and then writing at the same time. Okay. I then repeat those sounds daily. So I teach a different sound each day. We start with what we call set one sounds or word time one sounds. So these are all set one sounds, and they're broken up. This is word time 1, this one's word time 2, this one's word time 3, 4, 5, and it carries on. And every time I teach a new sound, I'm going back over the sounds that they already learnt as well. So I'm repeating each sound every day and then adding on the new one to whichever one they've learnt. So it moves quite quickly, and because I teach a new one every day, that's why it's important that your children are in school, because if they do miss, then they might miss a sound. However, I do go over and over and over it, so hopefully they will be able to pick it back up if they do miss it. When I teach them to write it, I don't actually teach them to hold a pen and write the letter. Sometimes we do that, but most of the time it's more about just getting the movement of the letter, because particularly at this stage, lots of children are not ready to hold a pencil yet. So I may not be getting them to write words and write letters unless they are ready. Lots of our tasks are multisensory. They include iPad use, or putting your finger in sand or salt or glitter to form with. They involve paint. They might involve something a little bit more messy, but it's all multisensory activity to try and get that movement of the letter stuck into the brain, and it links with the sound that they are saying at the same time. Okay, so when I teach reading, when I teach blending, I start off with the individual letters because that's what the children will already know. And we make sure that there's a gap between them as well. So I'd ask them what this sound makes, then I would ask them what this sound makes, and I would ask them what this sound makes, d. Okay. Then I would move the letters a little bit closer and tell the children that we need to say it a little bit faster now because the letters are closer together. Okay, so we go faster. D. And then I would say, oh, they need to get a bit closer. So we move the letters closer and we say it a little bit faster. D. All the time I'm saying it initially, and hoping that the children can hear the blend. But eventually I will be getting them to say it and I will say nothing, in the hope that they can then read the letters themselves. But finally we get them to get really close together. So close that they're touching. Sometimes I might even put them over the top of each other like that so that the word, so that the word is, so it looks more like a word than individual letters. And I would say, okay, now we need to go super, super fast. At the moment, this current class are obsessed with Sonic the Hedgehog. So that's what I use. We're going to go Sonic fast and we're going to say mad, mad. So all of a sudden I'm sounding those letters out so quickly that they're starting to form a word. And we're hoping that the children will hear me. I start off with saying it myself so that they can hear the word. But like I say, eventually I will be getting them to read those sounds out themselves and them to be saying those sounds super fast. This process takes a really long time. So don't worry if your child can't do it first time. I was quite shocked, I think, initially when I first started in reception because I was surprised that the children couldn't do it straight away. But it does just take a really, really long time. Okay. One thing I need you to be a little bit careful of is this sound, d. It sounds a little bit like that one, t, d, t. And so often the children might say mat for mad and mad for mat. Just be careful and emphasize those sounds again. Say them again very, very clearly. Say them in isolation, so say them by themselves, and then say them again in the word. So we're just trying to make sure that they can hear the difference in those sounds because they're a little bit challenging. Some of the sounds sound very similar, so it can be difficult to pick them out in a single word. The other thing that I would be doing, as well as teaching them to read and teaching them to blend this sound, so I would say, oh, mat, what can you hear? What word can you hear? And hopefully they'll tell me mat. And then I will explain to them what a mat is. Because lots of these words some of the children may not have come up against before, so I may either show them a mat, go and get one, or show them a picture of one. And then, for example, when we do this word, mad, what does mad mean? Mad, it means cross, it means angry, and then I would get them to show me a mad face. Just so we're starting to teach them that these sounds, when you put them together, they create words which mean things. And we want them to understand what those words mean because it's going to help with their comprehension, their understanding of their reading as they get older. Okay, so we start off by keeping them separate and then we move them closer together, closer together, closer together until they're really, really, really close together. Then we blend the sound quickly. And then we explain what that word means. And I would do that with every single green word, every single blendable word. I would teach it like that. Okay, so once the children are confidently blending and blending independently of me saying the sound, so not me saying at and then them responding with mat, but actually them saying the sounds and hearing the blend themselves. Once they can do that confidently, then I will start to send these sheets home for you. Okay, so you can see the specific sounds that we've been working on and the words that the children are learning to read. Remember, it's really important that if you can, you don't say the letters. So you don't say d, a, d, that the children say it. Now, you may find that they may find it a bit tricky to start with, and if that's the case, then by all means say the sounds. But I want to try and get to a point where you are not saying any sounds at all and that the children are reading it by themselves, okay? So these sheets will go home. They don't need to come back. They're just for you to practice at home, and I try and read with the children at least once a week so that I can move them on if they need to. What you find is once they can blend and they're confident with the blending, it will move quite quickly. So they will take these sheets home up until word time 7. This sheet is word time 1. But once they get to word time 5, then they may be able to read a book. And these are the books that they will read. We start off with red books. Now, normally I would send these books home, but at the moment we're not able to do that because of the current situation. So I have made a sheet like this, which I will send home instead. It's linked to the Oxford OWL website where you can, it's got a free resource. Now it hasn't got all the books that we use, but it's got lots of them. So you just have to sign up, put your email address in, and you can access a lot of the books that are on there, okay? At the bottom there, I will circle the book that I want you to read with your child, and so you can do it all online and you don't have to have any of the hard copies of the books. We also use Oxford Reading Buddies. Now, when the children are at this stage, Oxford Reading Buddies is okay, but until they can blend and they've got enough sounds, they can't read any of the books with words in. There is a stage before the words where you can just talk to your children about the books, and that's great. But so you can use this once they get to this point. Once you get one of these sheets home, you can probably start to access some of the lower levels of Oxford Reading Buddy, and I'll make sure that the children are put on that as well. If you don't have your Oxford Reading Buddy password, please come and see me. I've got one for every child. Okay, so once the children are confidently blending and blending independently of me saying the sound, so not me saying at and then them responding with mat, but actually them saying the sounds and hearing the blend themselves. Once they can do that confidently, then I will start to send these sheets home for you. Okay, so you can see the specific sounds that we've been working on and the words that the children are learning to read. Remember, it's really important that if you can, you don't say the letters. So you don't say d, a, d, that the children say it. Now, you may find that they may find it a bit tricky to start with. And if that's the case, then by all means, say the sounds. But I want to try and get to a point where you are not saying any sounds at all and that the children are reading it by themselves, okay? So these sheets will go home. They don't need to come back. They're just for you to practice at home, and I try and read with the children at least once a week so that I can move them on if they need to. What you find is once they can blend and they're confident with the blending, it will move quite quickly. So they will take these sheets home up until word time 7. This sheet is word time 1. But once they get to word time 5, then they may be able to read a book. And these are the books that they will read. We start off with red books. Now, normally I would send these books home, but at the moment we're not able to do that because of the current situation. So I have made a sheet like this, which I will send home instead. It's linked to the Oxford OWL website where you can, it's got a free resource. Now it hasn't got all the books that we use, but it's got lots of them. So you just have to sign up, put your email address in, and you can access a lot of the books that are on there, okay? At the bottom there, I will circle the book that I want you to read with your child, and so you can do it all online and you don't have to have any of the hard copies of the books. We also use Oxford Reading Buddies. Now, when the children are at this stage, Oxford Reading Buddies is okay, but until they can blend and they've got enough sounds, they can't read any of the books with words in. There is a stage before the words where you can just talk to your children about the books, and that's great. But so you can use this once they get to this point. Once you get one of these sheets home, you can probably start to access some of the lower levels of Oxford Reading Buddy, and I'll make sure that the children are put on that as well. If you don't have your Oxford Reading Buddy password, please come and see me. I've got one for every child. Okay, so when you're reading with your children, it's important that you don't keep them there for a very, very long time. We want reading to be the most fun, the most exciting, the most positive experience they've got. And if you're going to try and keep them reading for a very long time, then they're going to get fed up and you're going to get cross, and it's just not going to be an easy situation. Okay, so particularly the red books, these stories are very, very short. There's about 5 stories in this book, and I wouldn't expect the children to read all 5 in one sitting. They're about 2 or 3 pages long. So what I would like is that you go through the sounds, and that they practice these words, and then we also have these which are red words, which I will talk to you about in a second. If you're not sure how to interact with your children with reading, at the top here there are questions that you can ask your children. So this is about preparing them for the story, and then underneath at the bottom there are questions that you can ask about the story to check that the children have understood what they're reading. That part is really important. It's important that they know what they're reading, that they can answer questions on what they're reading. Otherwise, they're not really, they might be telling you what it says, but they're not understanding what it says. So it's really, really important that you talk to your children about what they are reading. They have to understand what it says, okay? So remember, these books are not all to be read in one go, particularly the red ones. As they get longer, you know, as you get to the higher stages, they are longer stories. But that is the expectation, that once the children get there, they're more capable to read for longer periods. But particularly with these ones, one story a day is more than enough. But we're just keeping repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating, because you will find that the words are similar and the sounds are similar in each book. Okay, so the sounds that the children can blend together to make words. If the word is a blendable word, we call that a green word, because it means they're capable and they can go. If there are some words in the English language that are not blendable, They're called sight vocabulary words. They're words that the children just have to learn. They can't use their phonic knowledge to blend the word, to create the word. And in Read Write Ink, these words are called red words. And these red words are split up into lists. The list that the children in my class work on are list 1A. And once they know all of those red words, then we would go on to 1B and carry on. Okay. Now these words are a little bit more tricky because the children will try and blend them because they know that's what they need to do, but you can't. So for example, this is a and a y. If I were to try and blend that, my, it doesn't make sense. So these words, I just tell them we have to stop and we just have to remember them. That's why they're red. I will send copies of these words home with you as well. So those words, they can just be taught as sight vocabulary words. I teach them alongside the sounds and I input them, and we've got some songs, and there are some great YouTube videos and things on what I think they're called tricky words on the video that we use in school. So to get the children just to recognise, so there are some words they just have to remember, and those red words are taught alongside blending, and they will be in these books as well for them to read. So those are a different type of words that just need to be taught. So as the children can blend, and they're quite confident and stable with their blending, they can also write, because like I said earlier, we're teaching them how to form the letters at the same time we're teaching them. They can use their blending knowledge to be able to write words as well. Now, initially, I wouldn't be expecting them to spell words, so to speak. They wouldn't know every sound within that word, but they may. The first stage is to try and get the first letter. So say, for example, I wanted them to write the word, I don't know, pencil. I would be saying to them, like, listen now, what sound can you hear? Pencil, pencil, pencil. In the hope that they would say p, and I'd say, yeah, great, write it down. So they'd write down a p, and then I'd say, right, listen now, what else? What other letters can you hear? Pencil. And they might say s, and I'd say, yeah, that's great, write that down. So as you can see, they're not spelling pencil, but they're starting to use the phonics, the sounds that they know, and hearing them and starting to put them into words. Okay, and that's perfectly fine. I wouldn't be expecting them to write words, except the red words. They may need help with those sounds because, again, they can't use their phonics to spell those. They need to just know them. Okay, as time moves on, we would be starting to get them to listen in for other sounds, for more sounds. So I'd say pencil. They might still write a s for pencil, and at this stage that's completely fine as well, because like I said, there are lots of sounds in the English language that make lots of letters that make different sounds, and that confuses them, and I'm not going to try and teach them the correct way for that. I'm just glad that they're using their phonics, they're using their knowledge to spell words. Okay, you may find that once they are blending well, they might be able to spell what we call CVC words. So that's a consonant with a vowel in the middle and then a consonant at the end. Words like cat and dog and bed. So they may be able to spell those because they're very, very short, but anything longer, I'm just trying to get them to hear sounds, and then make a list of some of those sounds. What you might find is they might write a whole sentence, but it'll only be the initial sound of each word, and that's brilliant. That's great. I'd be really, really pleased with that. And then as their knowledge of sounds and their knowledge of blending extends, then they would be maybe putting other letters in to create words. I just wanted to share with you my top tips for reading and writing. So if you take anything out of this video, please take these out of it. Okay, so when you are reading with your children, they need to be short. The sessions that you do, the work that you do with them needs to be short, 5-10 minutes at the most, but it needs to be regular. Doing it in very, very short bursts every day is much better than spending an hour on a Sunday trying to get them to do it, because they'll have lost attention span, particularly children of this age, that their attention span isn't very long anyway. So they'll have lost attention. It won't be fun, it won't be enjoyable, they won't be learning. Everybody's going to be stressed, so it's better to do very, very short sessions, but do them every day, than one big long one at the end. Please make it the most positive experience. It's got to be got to be a positive experience. It has to be a fun thing. It has to be a time that they can spend with you with no other distractions going on. And I know that that's not an easy thing to ask, but it really is important that that they feel that it's the most important thing for you. Often, cuddled up, I often cuddle up with my two, and that's just a really nice experience when you're sharing a book or when you're reading with your children, and they get that closeness with you, they get that comfort from you. So please try and make it a happy, positive experience. If they get it wrong, it doesn't matter. We call them marvellous mistakes in school, and I make out that a marvellous mistake is the most amazing thing in the world, because it means your brain's going to get bigger. So if they make a mistake, nobody needs to be cross. It's just oopsie, never mind. Oh, you're so lucky, you made a marvellous mistake. Now your brain's going to be bigger. And we carry on again. We just repeat and we just repeat and we just repeat. So please, it's got to be a really positive, fun experience to help them with their reading. We don't want any negative experiences at all if we can help it, because that can have an impact on further issues with reading and further ideas about reading and things like that, which we certainly don't want. Please don't put any schwas on the end of any sounds. That's that sound I was talking about before in the video. If you're not sure, please either come and see me or go onto Ruth Miskin's website, or go onto YouTube and Google Ruth Miskin. You'll be able to find the specific sounds and how to say them on there. And then always check that the children are understanding what they're reading. It's really, really important that they're not just telling you what the word says. They have to know what that word means. And when they're reading more information than just single words, that you can ask them questions about, not about what does it say, because they can tell you that, but what does it mean? What is that person thinking? What are they doing that? Why have they said that? So you're trying to get them to understand what they're reading as well. Many children can tell me what words say, but that's not going to help them in future life. They need to be able to understand what those words say, and they need to be able to process that information in their brains. So please making sure that you're checking that they understand everything that they're reading and not just telling you what the words say. Okay, some top tips for writing when you're writing with your children. Try and make sure that if the children are writing, it's for a reason. It's for a real life, purposeful reason, particularly if your child is a boy. Often you find that girls will just write, they're quite happy to do it. Boys take a lot more persuading than that. So things like shopping lists or notes to friends or family members. Maybe you're making a recipe and you need to make a note of what you need to write down. Maybe invitations to a party or a celebration. But please make sure that the children are involved in that, and give them a pencil, give them something to make a mark with, doesn't have to be a pencil, and get them to make marks and to try and write things down. If you know that your child can write letters, then maybe you could be starting to talk about those beginning sounds that I was telling you about. So say, for example, you needed to buy milk. You could say, oh, well, what does milk start with? Milk, and hopefully that they'll be able to pick up that it starts with a and they may be able to write that down as well. Again, make it really, really positive. It doesn't matter if they make a mistake. We're just trying to get them engaged in writing, and that it's a really fun experience. If you find that your child's pencil grip is awkward or difficult for them, then maybe work on any kind of hand strengthening, arm strengthening activities instead of getting them to write with a pencil. If their pencil grip is awkward or difficult for them, then it's going to be a negative experience because it's going to be hard work. So your best bet is to try and get them either to make marks with something that they can hold with a fist or with their finger, and then just trying to develop those hand muscles, those hand and arm muscles. Any kind of activity where they have to pinch, like pinching Play-Doh or picking things up off the table, or using a peg, a clothes peg where they have to squeeze it, that's going to develop those hand muscles, which is going to help. But also you need to develop these arm muscles and shoulder muscles too. So anything where they have to move their arms and pick things up, and their core muscles, which are their stomach muscles, to hold them in place so that they can move their arm to be able to write it. Come and see me if you're concerned. I've got a list of all different activities that the children can do to help to develop those. We are working on them in class as well if the children are having some difficulty with their pencil grip, but by all means you're very, very welcome to have a look at them as well. Okay, and then try to encourage the correct formation, because once a child thinks they know how to form a letter. It can be very, very difficult to unpick. And I find this often happens with girls because they want to write letters and they want to write things down. They will just make a mark that looks like it. And I can explain an A, for example. When we write an A, we go round, up, and down, and we don't take our pen off it at all. But what I find often is that the girls will just make a circle and then put a little line on the bottom, and that's not correct formation. So try and encourage correct formation wherever you can. I can give you a copy of how to form every letter if you need one. And also capitals. So capitals are much easier to write than the lowercase letters because they're all mostly straight lines. But we were trying to focus on the lowercase letters. So please try and teach your children the lowercase formation rather than capital letters. And then also when they're spelling, like I said earlier, listen and try and help them with the blending of sounds. What sounds can they hear first? What can they hear next? What can they hear at the end? And get them to write those sounds as well. Okay, so that was pretty much everything I wanted to say about Read Write Ink. Like I said earlier, please give me an email or come and see me if you have any questions. It may take some time before your child is ready to read, and that's perfectly fine. It's not a race. We just want everybody to be reading eventually, and we want them to be happy about it as well. So if you push your child too hard before they're ready, sometimes they don't enjoy reading and they find it difficult. What we want is for every child to enjoy the process of learning to read and then reading books as a result. So we're not pushing anybody. I just want them to enjoy it. I just wanted you to know how we do it so that when the time comes that your child is ready for that you know what you're doing and you know what we're doing, so we might be able to work together to help each other. Okay. Like I said, there's no pressure on it. It may take, your child may be reading by Christmas, maybe reading by Easter, may not be reading this year. It's going to just depend on the child and their understanding of how things work, whether they've missed school, whether they've had a cold when I'm teaching sounds. It's going to depend on so many different things. It's really not a race. The idea is that we want everybody to be reading, and we want them to be reading confidently and happily, rather than pushing them too hard before they're ready. Okay, so like I say, come and see me. Send me an email if you've got questions, but please don't worry if your child isn't reading yet. It doesn't matter. They'll get there, I promise.